Hey guys, I'm still outside. If you joined me, in the last episode, it's a good thing I didn't need to hear out of that. If you joined me in the last episode, you know that it's really hot in my house, so I came outside to cool off some. And just a warning that with me, and if I get up and start running, it's because she's chasing somebody or something. But hopefully that won't happen. Okay, we're returning back with the Shore Road Mystery, a Hardy Boys book. Will you stop stealing all my wood? Sorry about that. Okay, chapter 13, A Hungry Sleuth. Do you think the message is another trick? Chet asked Joseph as he studied the note. Could be. The handwriting's not Jack's, but it could be Mr. Dodd's. What do you think? Chet shrugged. It sounds like Mr. Dodd, but I still think it's suspicious. You're not going to go, are you? Joe paced the room. If only Frank were here. He looked at his watch. It's almost noon now. That doesn't give us much time to decide. At last, he made up his mind to go to the rendezvous. I can't afford not to go. I wouldn't sleep tonight if I just dismissed the possibility that the Dodds may have really escaped. There isn't any time to check the handwriting. Keep your fingers crossed. If you don't hear from me by 4, get out to Saucer Rock with Frank as fast as possible. Meanwhile, good luck in town and don't let Brenham's driver see that you're tailing him. After seeing Joe off on Frank's motorcycle, Chet was called by Aunt Gertrude to the kitchen. She handed him a wrapped, warm box. What's this? He asked. Since you're going into town, you won't mind dropping this cake off at Mrs. Bartlett's house on Kent Street, will you? I'll be glad to. When Chet reached the business district, he pulled his jalopy over to the curb. Guess I'll deliver the cake later, he said to himself. Chet felt very empty. Should have had a bigger lunch. He squared his shoulders and took out a list of Bayport markets supplied by the local farmers. He hoped to pick up the trail of the Brenham's produce truck. Guess I'll start with Max's supermarket. Drove on to the Food Fresh Market 3 blocks away. Seeing only a blue truck unloading vegetables, he headed farther down the street to a smaller store. He checked vehicles parked at the rear. No luck. Back in his jalopy, Chet looked longingly at a pork roll sandwich standing crowded with customers. Boy, I could go for a nice, juicy, well done. Quickly, he drove out of sight of at Castaña's grocery store near the waterfront. Chet obtained the name of the stores usually supplied by the Dodds' now jobless driver. These must be some of the places giving Brenham business now, the youth concluded, stuffing the list into his pocket. In the car again, he spread the paper out on the front seat, moving Aunt Gertrude's cake box over. For a moment, he eyed it hungrily, then drove off. By 2:30, he had covered 5 of the 9 listed stores without seeing the red truck. He shut off the motor and relaxed. His stomach rumbled. Should have eaten something at the Hardys, he thought, and again looked at the cake box. Taking out a pencil, Chet crossed out the stores and markets he had already covered. He sighed wearily. The vegetable deliveries may be over for today. Wonder what kind of cake Aunt Gertrude made. 4 places to go. Wonder. He lifted the lid of the white box and sniffed. Chocolate fudge, my favorite, he sighed, then started the motor and proceeded to Frankel's Market. Brenham's truck had just left here, the manager told him. About 5 to 10 minutes ago. I think he goes to a place on the west side of town after us. That must be the other fresh food store, Chet thought. Getting into the hot car, he again sniffed the cake box. Slipping the string off, he opened the cover and beheld the luscious whipped chocolate frosting. His stomach growled as he wiped his forehead. Maybe a little taste? Finding a large glob of frosting that had fallen off, he thumbed it. Carefully, he picked it up and laid it to his tongue. He murmured. When Chet reached the Food Fresh Market on Kennedy Street, he learned that the Brenham truck had not yet made its delivery. The man in charge of the produce department told him it would come. Guess I'll wait, Chet said, but almost immediately returned to the car. Untying the string again, he took a small dab of frosting. After half an hour, Chet got out, stretched, and paced back and forth in front of a restaurant. Then he got back in. He felt weak with hunger. The car was very warm. As the cake frosting became stickier in the heat, occasional breeze wafted its fragrance into Chet's nostrils. He opened the box. Just one more lick. By now, he had eaten all of the uneven globs of chocolate. Chet sighed. Slowly, he ran his finger lightly around the cake in a complete revolution, chuckling. Mrs. Bartlett won't even notice. After licking the frosting off his thumb, he studied the cake again. One part of the swath he had made was wider than the rest. With his finger, he made another circuit to even the groove. But in his eagerness, dug in too deeply at one place. Uh-oh, now I've done it, he moaned. Glancing out the window, he still saw no sign of the red truck. His eyes returned to the inviting cake. Can't just leave it that way, he mused. Then he swallowed. Morton, get hold of yourself. Chet got out and plodded to and fro. No red truck. Sighing, he climbed back into the front seat and uncovered the cake box again. If I just cut off that little gouged piece, I can tell Miss Bartlett I snitched a tiny bit. Chet sat back, tucked the handkerchief into his shirt, having no knife, made a small wedge of two pudgy fingers to push down through the thick, melting frosting. A minute later, his hands and chin were dabbed with chocolate. The hungry boy surveyed the damage. Several thumbprints surrounded the drooping surface near the small missing segment. Besides, his fingers had cut wider and wider on their path towards the plate. Gotta even it off. 20 minutes later, Chet was still evening up the wedge and making it larger and larger. Suddenly, he heard a heavy motor and saw a huge red truck marked Brenham pull into an alley next to the store. He climbed out and crossed the street. Chet leaned heavily against the mailbox. He had a clear view of the back end of the truck as it was unloaded by the driver and two store employees. It appeared to be the truck's final delivery, for its 8 or 10 remaining vegetable crates were removed and taken into the store. That truck's big enough to carry two small cars, all right, he said to himself. The tough-looking driver started the motor and began backing out. Chet hastened to his car, his stomach feeling a bit uncomfortable. Behind the wheel, he loosened his belt. Wonder where that driver's going, Chet thought. A block from Barmont Bay, he saw a produce van pull up into a large, dilapidated brown shingle warehouse surrounded by a vast, junk-filled lot. The faded sign over the door read, Kitcher's Junkyard. Chet cut his rackety engine and looked warily up the street towards the building. He heard the truck door slam. What could Brenham have to do with a rundown place like this, he wondered. Chet decided to take a closer look and shuffled up the street. Nobody was in sight at the wide entrance. Swallowing dryly, Chet hitched his trousers and after peeking in the warehouse, tiptoed inside. A faint murmur of voices came to him from behind a closed door in the rear. Next to the parked truck was a black sedan. Chet recognized as the one driven by Slagle. He peered in its rear window. On the floor lay a small vinyl phonograph record near a small generator. A clue. I'll give it to Frank and Joe. After glancing towards the office, he reached in and picked up the disc, then slid it in his t-shirt. Chet turned to the musty flaps on the back of the truck. His face red with exertion, he clambered up and squeezed through the flap opening, letting some light into the rank-smelling interior. On the stained bare floor were scattered splinters of wood and random rotted greens. If these vegetables don't prove to be clues, he thought, I can use them for samples of botanical deterioration. As he scooped up the various greens into his pocket, Chet noticed the scratched floor, muddied, ridge-like patterns. Tire tread marks, he gasped. Then he heard the voice of an approaching man calling back to the office. No, the kids will fall for the trap. Slaggle's waiting out at Saucer Rock to take care of them. Good night, Joe. Joe's out there. Chet realized suddenly, feeling sweat on his forehead. His heart thumped wildly. I must get back. Just then, the truck flap flew open and light flooded the interior. Glaring in at him, Chet saw the hard face of a stocky, red-haired man. And that's the end. That was a fast chapter, felt like.